Thank you so much, viewers. This is Alliance for Finance Monitoring, and my name is Eddie Kainda. I'm hosting the show today on behalf of Felix Kafuma, who is not here with us. Today's show, we shall be discussing about the performance of poverty alleviation funds in Uganda, but specifically, we're picking the case of Emyooga. You understand that we have been having the over 260 billion shillings disbursed by government to undertake poverty alleviation, especially for specific occupations in the 146 districts of Uganda. But we also know that these funds are supposed to serve over 6,394 circles based in 353 constituencies around the country. Discussing that with us will be Mr. Walakira Rubangakene. He happens to be the Speaker of Kawempe Division, but also he's a scholar at GLIS. GLIS is the Great Lakes Institute of Strategic Studies, but he's also a scholar at Makerere University. Mr. Rubangakene, welcome to the show, and you can say hello to the viewers.
Hello to our viewers. Thank you very much, Eddie, for having me.
Yes, thank you. We are supposed to be joined in by the LC5 chairperson of Lwengo district. He specifically calls himself governor of the district, probably has issues or finishing up some undone business, and probably he'll be joining us at some point. But we shall take it on from there when he comes in. Straight to our topic for today. We are in politics and performance of the Emyooga funds. And just like I have mentioned, we have a stiff challenge in the last many years where we have been having issues of unemployment, issues of criminality, issues of low economic performance, especially at micro and macro level. But probably because we have had a breakdown of the economic production units at lower level, especially in communities where we are supposed to see factors of production at play. In response to that, as a result of low economic performance and the rising poverty levels, especially in the last 2 years when we have COVID-19, government has come up with strategies of ensuring that economic production is boosted, probably through bring on forward any yet another new modality of enhancing capacity of production, where Emyooga funds have been disbursed through government, Ministry of Finance, Micro Support, Finance Support Center, and probably to the circles and groups that are supposed to be beneficiaries of this. For purposes of knowledge, 260 billion shillings has been disbursed to over 6,489 groups in about 553 constituencies. And ideally, these groups are supposed to have about 10 to 20 members. And these groups are supposed to form circles. A circle is supposed to receive either between 30 to 50 million shillings in terms of funds, and these funds are supposed to be distributed or borrowed on interest of between 8 to 12% per person who takes in these funds, with a notion that this person is supposed to repay this money to the circle. And that's where we're going to come in. Mr. Akampurira, given that background, in a layman's understanding, when somebody hears of Emyooga funds, what should he take? What is it? If you're explaining to your lay voter in Kawempe, what is Emyooga funds? What do we take out of it?
Thank you. Thank you, Eddie. Perhaps I should start by providing our viewers with a little bit of background to contextualize our discussion.
Yes.
In 2019, the government of Uganda conducted a study, a countrywide study, following the operationalization of wealth creation So they wanted to know the impact of that program and the performance of Ugandans. Of course, they were preparing for the next election. Campaigns were to begin in 2020. So they found out that 68.9% of Ugandans were outside the money economy, or they were living subsistent life. That is hand-to-mouth kind of life. That was a scary statistics. It was a brutal indication of the performance of the wealth creation program, which the president had touted for the last more than 5 years. We must also remember that part of the wealth creation programs included programs like the Youth Livelihood Fund and the Community Development Fund, and later on the Women Development Funds. So the program, the government program of wealth creation, had been predominantly marked by funds, and these are, cash handouts from the governments to the people. Now, of course, after finding out that 68 people were vulnerable, 68% of Ugandans, Uganda has a population of about 40 million. So that's about 27 million vulnerable Ugandans who are outside the economy. And that was a big, big threat for the old man who was preparing to run for the next election. And there's a pressure group called the People Power, led by His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi. So that was a threat. So his advisors, the political gerrymanderers, advised that let's create a program called Emyooga. And like you rightly said, they gazetted 620 billion Ugandan shillings, 260 billion Ugandan shillings for this program. But to answer your question, Eddie, Emyooga program is really, or it was, we are living in the aftermath of the intention of the program. And as we shall discuss later, that's why it's nowhere. It's everywhere, but nowhere. It was a campaign tool which the government used for political ends. And no wonder now Parliament has said we want to see who has received that money. So when you ask an ordinary Kawempian about Emyooga, say, what kind of an animal is that? I don't know where it is.
We understand that Emyooga is a non-partisan project, and probably I understand you subscribe to the National Unity Platform, but irrespective of whether you're NUP or NRM or FDC, you are supposed to receive this money. Are there groups in Kawempe that subscribe to the opposition that have received this money?
So Ed, let's first debunk some of the myths that are told to us by our politicians.
Yes.
Number one, the important points that we need to note as matter of fact, the timing of the Emyooga Fund. Precisely, it was launched in October 2020. And you know that, and you know we are in the, we're right in the middle of the campaign period. And the Emyooga is launched as a presidential initiative on wealth creation and job creation. And what they were doing precisely was to bribe the voters. And you can clearly see that come out from the target groups. They were targeting, number one, border riders. They were targeting young people who are part of the 68 disenfranchised Ugandans. They were targeting welders. They were targeting carpenters. They were targeting garage operators. They were targeting what you'd call the typical vulnerable Ugandans, or the Ugandans that have been left behind by the government of President Museveni for the last 30 and so years. And therefore, they needed a tool exploiting their vulnerability to make sure they sway away them from national unity platform. These form the base. These are the foundation. They are the rock foundation of national unity platform. And Eddie, I can provide with you documents. I can give anyone who is interested in this information, reports by the Ministry of Finance, parliamentary hazards, which indicate that the Emyooga program, which was introduced right in the middle of the campaign by a presidential candidate using public finances of a political party. As you know, National Unity Platform is about the ordinary Ugandan. We are about giving the voice to all those who have been left behind by the for the last 30 years of his. So when you say that this is a non-partisan program, I disagree, and statistics disagree, facts disagree.
So you want to categorically state that Emyooga is a political program, and the beneficiaries are not opposition but NRM subscribers. Is that your position?
Yes, and I can give you 4 pointers. As a researcher, I know you believe in evidence. ACFIM is an organization that is evidence-based. It's a knowledge organization. I want to give you pointers which you can follow to arrive at my conclusion.
Please go ahead.
Number one, look at the institutional framework for the management of this program. They will tell you that at the top, there is the Ministry of Finance using the Ministry of Finance using the Microfinance Support Center as a disbursement agency. But immediately after the Ministry of Finance, then there is the district Emyooga task force headed by a politician, the RDC. The RDC is the head of security. He works through the GISO, the PISO, and many other state informers. So you either to be registered, promise the RDC that you're going to support the government, or you're not a dissident in their opinion, or you are already an NRM cadre. Institutionally, if this program was meant to genuinely help alleviate poverty for the poverty-stricken Ugandans, we know what kind of an institutional policy and legal framework that would have been put in place to ensure effectiveness of the program, and would see more of technocrats than politicians being involved in the implementation of the program. Let's not forget that the Emyooga program in itself is not any different from, say, Youth Livelihood Fund. It's not any different from Operation Wealth Creation. They had to change the name for political reasons. But when you look at the model, it's not different from Youth Livelihood Fund, which is a total failure, a disaster. Maybe if this government was left with any ounce of integrity, they should have started by giving the Ugandans a report on the performance of youth livelihood funds and other cash handout programs like women, development programs, like community development programs that the government has been implementing. Would have seen systematic and methodical procedures being followed by the government. For example, you would see, surveys aimed at studying the businesses that need to be supported in a particular area. You would see,
if I could interject you in there, probably that is why we see Parliament coming into for the Speaker to give a directive that Please, honorable members, go out into your constituencies and ensure that you monitor the performance of this project. If I can give you snippets of some of the key evaluation findings that MPs have found. For example, we have found cases of ghost beneficiaries. The ghosts are still haunting us. You remember the ghost soldiers, the ghost pupils, and the ghost head teachers. Now into the ghost beneficiaries of Emyooga, but also district officers, commercial officers cooking the list of beneficiaries at community level, and some of the persons that are supposed got the money were not the intended beneficiaries. If you look, if you go to Kaberamaido, for example, evaluation indicates to us that the Radio Callers Association received the money vis-a-vis the journalists that were supposed to receive that money. But in Wakiso, just here, a stone away, the commercial officers have been cautioned for making a deduction of between 10 to 20% of the monies that these persons are supposed to receive. And another case in Soroti where, remember that this is not a donation, but money that is supposed to be returned. For the last 2 years, out of the 1.1 billion shillings, only 10 million shillings has been returned in terms of money that is supposed to be recovered. What does this mean to the whole project based on the background you've been giving as a politician?
Eddie, I am very sorry, but what Parliament is doing is an act of postmortem.
Yes.
The patient is already dead. And now we want to find out the cause of death. We had an opportunity to carry out that kind of diagnosis. Things that ought to have been done before rolling out of the program are the things that the Parliament of Uganda is proposing to do right now. When you described some of the vices that are affecting the performance of the program, I thought that you were describing Youth Livelihood Fund. Because between 2016 and 2021, I was a counselor at Kawempe. And what we were struggling with were ghosty groups. We are asking where these groups, you go on ground to look for them, you cannot find them. And you've reminded me of the ghost soldiers, the ghost pensioners, the ghost teachers, the ghost now Emyooga beneficiaries. This is a ghost country. So with a ghost government. So if you have a ghost government, what do you expect? Let's not forget that the legitimacy of this government itself is still in question. But that's besides the point, Eddie. Really, what we are seeing exactly exemplifies and vindicates my point that this was not a program genuinely implemented or aimed at alleviating the poverty of Ugandans who need that program. It was a political device. Political devices are just a tool for auctioning. They are tools of getting out the votes. And the candidate who is looking out for the votes doesn't care. All he needs is the vote. How he gets it doesn't matter. Whether it means whipping you, whether it means arresting the opponent, whether it means promising to give you cash, even if this cash is going to tap it at the next end, it doesn't matter. And what we've witnessed, for example, in Masaka, where there are rampant cases of ghost beneficiary groups, is a microcosm of what is happening throughout the country. I can easily get you ghost groups in Kawempe. You can get ghost groups in Mbarara. You can get ghost groups in Kaberamaido. Everywhere you go, you will get ghost groups because the program is not meant to help. The program is political, and these ghost groups are being registered with full knowledge of those who are supposed to implement the program. Because the chairperson of the district Emyooga task force is the RDC, who is the direct or immediate representative of the president. He is the supervisor in that case of the district commercial officer, and the district commercial officer is in charge of making sure that only rightful groups are arrived at. But we can only assume or pretend to have this discussion only if we write ourselves that this group, that this program is intended to work. From its conception, it is exactly supposed to work the way it is supposed to work. Favor and allow money to be, given. It's a way of rewarding those who were beating opposition, the state operative and cadres. So it's not a surprise. And this is not different from the Youth Livelihood Fund. This is not different from wealth creation, Operation Wealth Creation. It is not different from the many government programs. But I think Parliament ought to do a better job next time. This business of post-mortem money is already wasted. Instead of at the inception of program ensuring mechanisms are built into implementation to make sure that the taxpayers' money does not get wasted. Now, Parliament is waking up from slumber, and now they are saying we want to find implementation. Well, the money is already expended. It's already spent.
Walakira, and on the same issue, you seem to have a person following you from Kawempe, Gilbert Habasa. He seems to mention that as the opposition, you are supposed to provide alternative options of how some of these, because this is public money, how some of these public funds can be used. And as a councillor or a speaker, you're supposed to ensure that there's accountability for this money and the projects are sustainable. But from the start, have you tried to follow up how many groups have benefited from in Kawempe, for example? Is there a list you have accessed maybe on the public notice boards of how many groups, for example, in Kawempe have ever received these Emyooga funds? And what have you done to ensure that probably the benefits of these funds are supportive and sustainable to the youth that receive these monies?
Thank you, Eddie, and I want to thank Gilbert Harasa for raising that important question. You must be aware that the program has been implemented in the shadows of political scrutiny because it's been ongoing. Disbursement of monies have been ongoing. Even when we were under lockdown, we could not move. Up to now, we are still preparing to have our council. You must remember that the RCC and the deputy RCCs in Kampala, all the 5 divisions, the councils could not meet for Kampala illegally, even when Rule 15 of the statutory instrument on COVID-19 issued by Ministry of Health was clear that were exempted, were supposed to scrutinize such government programs, were illegally locked down. It's just last week when we approved the executive committee of Kawempe Urban Council, and so is the other divisions. But I also want to mention that usually oversight and exactly oversight role is of post-mortem nature, because when I'm reviewing the reports of the groups which have received the money has been already spent. Even if I discover that 10 or 20% of the groups were ghost groups, it is only post ante. It doesn't help a lot. Of course, it is important in a sense that then the responsible officers are put to account, but we know how these accountability stories end in Uganda. Yes, it is important. As council, we have a very big responsibility to play, but I think we need to revise the laws to make sure that at every process, even right before the monies are dispensed with, that there is scrutiny of these names which are going to receive. Unfortunately for Emyooga, speaking for councils in Kampala, there was no opportunity to do that. We could not scrutinize that because of the pandemic environment.
Thank you for that response. Habasa, thank you for raising that issue. But I want to go back to you as I understand the National Unity Platform is now the biggest political party in opposition, and you're supposed to be giving alternative options on how some of these government projects are performing. What else can we offer? What else can we offer? How can we go forward over the same? Are we going to continue this kind of scenario? What is it that people are looking up to you as an alternative option for performance, for development, for poverty alleviation? You do not seem to have options brought on table. How do we go forward?
I think that there are some perceptions that we need to debunk in order to reveal the actual problem. I think sometimes commentators and political analysts in our country focus on the wrong problem. The problem of Uganda is not lack of sound policies. The problem of this country is not per se lack of alternatives. Even if we presented an alternative to Emyooga fund, and there's quite many. Even if you looked around countries which have been in the same dilemma like we are and have managed to move forward, there are many examples from which we can learn from. But unfortunately, academicians and many research organizations usually tend to focus on the alternative as if that is a problem. The problem is implementation. I don't know if we need a policy on policy implementation in this country, but the biggest problem is implementation. Because even if you have the best policy in this country, it will die. Why? Because you have best cases of corruption. If you want to benchmark on how to be corrupt, you come to this country. If you want to benchmark on how to create ghost funds, how to create ghost pensioners, ghost teachers, you come to this country. If you want to benchmark on any vice on how to enrich, of course, unethically yourself, you come to this country. And you realize that to remove that problem, no, there is an old saying that the fish rots from the head. To remove the problem that this country is faced with, we must deal with the governance question. And I will show you why this is so. Because you have a parliament there, which is supposed to make sure that they legislate and provide stringent oversight mechanisms. But they are incapable of doing that. So you have a constitutional framework which in it and by itself should deliver a very good governance to the country. But that is not working because a constitution on itself is a document, is a framework. It is you and I, it is the leaders who give it the spirit, who give it life. So if the leaders do not give that document, do not give sound policies a life, even if you come up with as many alternatives, even if you have top class, Western standard policy alternatives, they will die the natural death just because the human beings in charge of running the country are simply not interested in that.
Thank you so much, Walakira, Akampurira, Rubangakene. You are live on ACFIM Talks, and we shall go in for a commercial break for at least 1 minute. But when we come back, we shall be looking at what else can we do to ensure that Emyooga works. Was supposed to be joined in by the LC5 chairperson of Lwengo district, Ibrahim Kitata Malik, but for some reasons he cannot connect with us. Probably will be coming in the second segment of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we shall get back in the second segment after the commercial break.
Thank you.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.
Yes, welcome back to the second segment of the show. And just like the advert in the commercial break, please voters vote issues, do not vote money. ACFIM is there to ensure that we sensitize persons, to ensure that they look at ideas, service delivery, and credibility of the persons voted in, but not money that is presented to them into voter inducement and direct voter bribery. We're discussing the issue of performance of Emyooga funds, and with us is Akampurira Walakira Rubangakene, a proud NUP supporter and a councillor and a speaker for Kawempe division. And before the first, in the first segment, we looked at how the Emyooga has been performing, but also the kind of issues or irregularities that have marred the implementation of the Emyooga funds. I liked it when you say that probably we need a policy on policy implementation. That was a good one. But going forward, I'd want to ask, could corruption within the Emyooga disbursement processes be getting Uganda devoid of a well-intentioned program, just like the other previous programs did, the Intandikwa Plan for Modernization of Agriculture, NADS, Youth Livelihood Fund, among others? Could corruption be eating up such a well-intentioned program? And what other ways can we try to salvage this well-intentioned program to ensure that it can fulfill the intention of Ugandans, but also government as a whole, from the perspective of the opposition politicians?
Eddie, first of all, I want to reiterate my point that the spirit behind all these programs, Intandikwa, Emyooga, Youth Livelihood, has never been a good spirit for the country. It has always been a selfish spirit for a small group of people whose project is longevity in power. However, that is the government that we have, and we need to find ways of how to salvage whatever little there is that we can take away from such programs. And on that note, I would really like to thank the members of parliament for saying that we are interested in studying and auditing the Emyooga program. I would call upon many other organizations, especially civil society organizations, the academia, and all rightful thinking members of Uganda to be interested in investigating disbursement of monies, because any democracy is as good as the level of participation of its citizens. So I would like to call upon everyone. And on that note, thank you, ACFIM, for your interest in these issues. I think that we need more public interest in these issues, because it is through more scrutiny, it is through more public outcry on such programs that we expose and in the process reduce grand corruption schemes that are going on in this country. So yes, we need to study more, and this should not be only Parliament. Parliament needs to be assisted. Most parliamentarians have looked at the method they are using to investigate the program. They are not methodical. They are not as rigorous and meticulous as they ought to be in order to bring out the evidence to the surface. Because this is taxpayers' money that is being swindled, and we must make sure that each and every officer or citizen who is involved in misappropriation of public funds is held accountable. So, in a nutshell, what I realize as the problem areas, number one is the institutional framework of implementation of these programs. I think they should remove them from the realm of politicians and put them directly under the technicians and lessen interference of presidential directives. I was reading a report by Frederick Ibert Stiftung, and the current permanent secretary for finance is the author. Then he was coming from the academia. And one of the issues that the report highlights for the failure of government programs or delayed implementation of government programs is high rewarded letters by the president interfering in the normal running of these programs. So we need to remove the political hand from most of these programs and put them right under the control of technical officers, and politicians only come in when they are playing their oversight role.
On that very one, before it gets off, when you're talking about the technical officers taking on the program, we're looking at commercial officers themselves and production officers who are supposed to be guiding the process of acquisition and disbursement, swindling money from the beneficiaries in order to either approve, and there's a mandatory 10 to 20% of the money that they're supposed to be receiving. And in the same relation, remember that these are many members. For example, I have learned that in Kampala, we had about 30 million shillings being disbursed to over 300 members of the Boda Association. And ideally, that means that each of these members is receiving merely 100,000 shillings, maybe in a loan to start up a business. Would that be something that the technocrats are able to do? And in the same regard, Hawassa is following us and is saying that statistics show that in Kampala alone, the 5 divisions, about 5.76 billion shillings has been disbursed, including Kawempe, over 190 circles, and is asking, are you sure that you have not known any of the beneficiaries of these funds that have been disbursed, including your constituency as councillor and speaker? Please go on.
Thank you, Eddie. So the issue of district commercial officers being involved in creation of ghost groups or ghost beneficiaries, I think in a way it vindicates the point that I'm already making. In the implementation of this program, the RDC plays a big role. The district commercial officer is representing to the RDC. So when he creates ghost groups, he's creating them on behalf of the RDC. And let's wait for the parliamentary reports the MPs have been tasked to find out. You will find that the RDC directly, in one way or the other, encouraged the district commercial officer to, find a way of incorporating in NRM supporters. They must reward them for their job done in the elections. So it is not without the knowledge of the supervisors. Ordinarily speaking, the district commercial officer should be supervised, should report to the chief executive, the chief accounting officer, the COW, which is the head of the technical team at the district, who is answerable to the district service commission, and so doing answerable to public service commission. But the RDC will not allow that process take place. In fact, in almost every district, the RDC is more powerful than the COW. And the RDC is in spirit implementing the spirit of the president. So it is a corruption scheme. So I thought that we should be honest about that. To answer the question of Gilbert Habasa, I've already stated here that this money was disbursed during the pandemic. We did not have an opportunity as council to scrutinize or pass the groups, because ordinarily the beneficiary groups should have been passed by the council of Kawempe. There is no council which sat to pass these groups. So as a speaker, how can I know? We have only had only one council to pass the executive committee of the council. And that is after the illegal closure of local governments by the RDCs. So while we are closed down as politicians who are supposed to offer an oversight role, a lot of public funds were being dispensed with. So I want to be very honest that, I'm going to ask for these reports. Our council operates under standing committees. That is where most of the council business is conducted. And after scrutiny of the reports, departmental reports, which are submitted to standing committees of council, then they are brought to the council, which I chair specifically for Kawempe. Then we shall have an opportunity to scrutinize. Yeah, that is something that is ongoing. I'm not supposed to interfere with committee work. That is improper. So yes, unfortunate as it is, even after dispensing with the money, I don't know which group received the money. The mayor doesn't know. The councillors don't know. You will be shocked that even the town clerk doesn't know. If we want this information, the RCC will give it to you.
Oh, thank you. You're trying to allude to the fact that the disbursement and the implementation of the Emyooga scheme has bypassed all known structures of local governance when they're actually supposed to be using the same systems to ensure that they reach out to the people. But there's also another issue that is emerging about the turnaround for between application and actual disbursement of funds. Remember that the spirit of disbursement of Emyooga funds was stimulating the local economy, but also relieving persons out of poverty. You are coming in to save a person today, but you're taking in another 6 months to respond. As a local government leader and a youth and a young person who is supposed to be looked at by your fellow young people as a savior, what could be the problem? What can we do to reduce the turnaround time so that if you apply, you should be able to receive the funds? But most importantly, what are you going to do? You try to allude that you have totally been bypassed. When Habasa mentions that we have 190 circle groups that have received the money, and the speaker does not know any of these. What does that mean to you as a leader of a division that houses
Of course,
over 500 people?
500 people,
Yes,
500,000.
yes, yes.
Of course, it is unfortunate situation that
Yes, I seem to be losing you.
I would challenge you, Eddie, to ask any speaker with the same. Of course, I am interested in knowing where Hawassa is getting the statistics. I don't know. I've looked around. I've been interested in this subject. I tried to ask the town clerk. He did not have any grain of knowledge about the number of groups and money which has been disbursed. But Hawassa seems to be, privy to this information. Either he is a friend to some RCCs, or he has privy information. Would be interested in knowing where he got his information. But procedurally speaking, it's not an act of incompetence on my side. When you ask around, they will tell you Kawempe has the best leaders, they have one of the best speakers, they have the most inquisitive speaker. I haven't come across any of such information. So, but I wanted to mention something, Eddie, to do with this fund. When you look at the statement by the minister in charge of microfinance, the state minister in Uganda, that is Haruna Kasoro, presented in Parliament in 2020 September. The purpose of the fund was to facilitate socio-economic transformation of the 68% Ugandans that I talked about, where the border riders, the carpenters, the women entrepreneur groups, the garage operators, the vulnerable really, the ones who have been left behind by government programs. That is the group that this fund, the Emyooga fund, was supposed to help. And we said 68% of 40 million, you can calculate is about 27 million. But you have gazetted 260 billion. I want to ask viewers, how much is the presidential fleet? You're designing a program to socially and economically transform a group of 68% of your population. That is 27 million and above. But you're allocating them 260 billion. But the presidential fleet is much more than that. Just the cars that the president moves around with. Think about that. And you're saying that even when you're giving out this money, the priority groups, and this is in the document of the minister, the priority groups as the apex specific circles in each constituency. When you dig deep, the apex specific circles are the NRM cadres at the constituency level, which were supposed to galvanize the votes. Category number 2, each of those circles was supposed to receive 30 million. Category number 2, they are the constituency leaders. That the leaders were supposed to constitute themselves, the constituency leaders were supposed to constitute themselves into a group and receive 50 million. That is the design of the program. Of course, that takes us back to the spirit, the timing, that this was not merely a program aimed genuine at transformation of these people, but this was a campaign tool. You have already calculated that using data from one of the border groups in Kampala, you're the one who mentioned that data, that each would be able to borrow only 100,000. Now think about it. What business, what entrepreneurship can anyone imagine beginning is 100,000. When you look at their statistics, they are saying that each constituency is allocated 620 million. That is money for one project. If you're talking about really high productive ventures that are going to have a sector-wide and ripple effects on the community, 620 million should be one project, well thought out, well designed, and well implemented project. That would be one project. In some cases, not even enough. But you're saying that each member can borrow up to 100, meaning that this is money for sharing. No wonder and it is the same model for Youth Livelihood Fund. Members would share the money, each takes 50, 20,000, 100. And because there is literally no business you can begin in Uganda with 100,000, members resort to eating this money. Remember, we are in a pandemic. Members are struggling with rent. Businesses are crumbling down with rent. Even if you give them 2 million in this environment, little or nothing it can do. So that takes us back to the question of the soundness. How sound are these programs? You cannot.
Could that be? Sorry, I seem to be losing you. There could be an issue of organizing, civic organizing, that probably when you look at the recovery rates, that most of these monies that were being given to the members, there is very little recovery, pointing to your allusion that some of this money has been shared out by the members to the very minute levels. Couldn't it be a fact that probably the groups have been ill-prepared, or the young people who are the key beneficiaries of these funds have disorganized themselves internally, and they have refused to understand the key concept or reasoning behind being given this money, and they are the ones to lose? What should the young people do to ensure that they can do better than this?
Eddie, a well thought out program would have done the following. Number one, proper market research to understand what factors are at play and areas in which we can move a lot of our young people in order for them to be productive and sustainably so. In other words, the government should have conducted a worthy study to arrive at areas that can be supported, industries, or kind of entrepreneurial projects that can be started. Number two, identifying or mobilizing the young people into these groups and identifying an institution or institutions for training, skilling, and reskilling of the young people in preparation of these projects. Because you're giving a young person money or a group, this young person has never managed 50,000, but you're saying manage 100. I've never started a group, any business venture. They do not have any knowledge of how to market their produce, even to begin with, to make the produce itself, to make the product. Is it viable? What do I need? There is nothing completely, and you're just throwing money at them. Here is money, here is money, here is money, here is money. That is not how good stuff works. So methodical and rigorous in putting together the basic requirements. First of all, identifying sectors where most of our young people can be moved, and young people be prepared over time. It is not a one training workshop. Like I always see that we are sensitizing them. No, young people need to be identified and in a hierarchical manner, because we know that some ventures are more productive than the others. One venture that is And that one venture is started by the same amount of money you're giving to 1,000 groups, but at the same, if well thought, that venture would end up in the long run employing 1,000 people. But because you're getting, there would be money to start a sustainable venture and spreading over a big number of people, the money end up disappearing because it cannot create impact. So we need to identify the young people who are going to be the leaders in business, in production, and these leaders can start up ventures that are sustainable, that are of high value, high productivity, and in the medium and long run can end up employing more young people. This business of giving cash handouts to young people who are vulnerable doesn't help them at all.
Thank you. As we come towards the end of this show, we need to have your expert advice on how best do we save the Emyooga funds from taking the same trends, taking the same harm's way to ensuring that we can do better. As we come towards the tail end of the Emyooga, we now having another new model coming in, the parish development model that is replacing the Emyooga. And other than coexisting, what experiences can we borrow from the Emyooga scheme that we can take into the parish development model? Are we getting into one challenge and we are getting into another challenge, or how should we structure ourselves into ensuring that the new model that is coming in to help parishes, probably replacing the Emyooga, can do better from the national perspective, from the district perspective, but also from the community perspective, as we have in our parting shot?
Thank you, Eddie. I am afraid that Emyooga cannot be saved because it's already dead. It's lying in the mortuary at Murago. Or we are doing it post-mortem, see what happened, but it cannot be saved. Almost 100% of the funds have been dispensed with, given out to young people, and young people are using the little money to help themselves overcome the glaring effects of the pandemic. But also to mention that a lot of this money has been taken by ghosts who the government very well is in connivance with and understands very well. Lessons learned is that as the Ugandan population, as the public, we need to pay more attention. Next time these programs come up, we need to put our members of parliament to task to make sure that all the requirements, all the boxes that needs to be ticked have been ticked. And most importantly, that these projects are not within the realm of politicians, that we can ensure that there is going to be proper monitoring and evaluation, that the implementers are known and agreed upon across board. This business of government running with the program alone does not help. This country belongs to all of us, whether government, whether opposition. This country belongs to all of us. When you go to Namibia and other South African countries, you realize that before a government implements any program, they create avenues for consultation with the opposition. So there is a point where you reach and say, this is beyond the realm of politics. This is to save the country. This is beyond all of us. This is a program that is nationalistic in character, and we should devoid it of any politicking and so forth. So there is need for, nationwide and consultative processes across political parties and other stakeholders, involvement of civil society and other organizations and think tanks like you, the academia, into programs that we think these are at the core of salvaging the plight of the Ugandans.
We seem to be having a very ardent supporter here and viewer who is saying that in the last 3 years, government has expended over 4 trillion shillings in the fight against COVID, but also as part of the stimulus package. And about 69% of these funds have been allocated in 2020, 2021, which was a political season, and is wanting to know your comment about it. Could that have been political money, or it was well-intentioned to ensure that people get out of poverty before you leave, sir?
Which people got out of poverty? You see, people, Comrade Eddie, money that is genuinely aimed at getting people out of poverty, we know the right channel through which to give it out. And we know the proper processes of giving it out. We know that such monies are always easily subjected to public scrutiny. They are always there for the public to see. This money which passes under the carpet, usually given out in the dark, that is dark money. Unfortunately, it is our money being given out by the corrupt regime. Let people not forget that the NRM is the most corrupt political party in the world. And this is not my research, this is not my finding. So if you have the most corrupt political party in governance, what do you expect? You expect corruption in and out, all through. So that's why I was reading the report of ACFIM, and you are talking about ghosts. Yes, you are going to have ghosts all over because we have a ghost government. So what is the way forward for Uganda? It is time for young people, and I specifically speak to young people because you and I are going to live longer, or at least are expected to live longer than any other age group in this country. Therefore, we must come together and dispense with our generational cause. And the generational cause is to uproot a corrupt regime and establish a regime that works for everyone. That begins with ourselves taking a firm stand not to be corrupt and saying that we are going to be a generation that espouses a higher level of consciousness that is determined to uplift this country from the rags of third world shackles, from the chains of dictatorship that we find ourselves, and engineer programs that are going to catapult our country into first world in a record time. Singapore has done it, Malaysia has done it, South Korea has done it. We at once were at the same level of economic development as these countries, and so we can do it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walakira Rubangakene Akampurira, for having us, for attending our show. My name has been Eddie Kainda, and it's Eddie Kainda as always, and the views expressed on this show are entirely the views of our guest that is attending this show today, not the views of ACFIM. But we thank you so much. We've been discussing the politics and performance of the Emyooga funds. Countrymen, it's upon ourselves to ensure that we get ourselves from the shackles of poverty. Any money that comes to us must be put to good use. Otherwise, we are responsible for cutting the chains of poverty and the bondage of poverty amongst ourselves. It's been me, Eddie Kainda, with Akampurira, the proud no person that we had on the show. Thank you so much. Until next Friday. Bye-bye. Thank you.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.